in the chat, Rachel and her boyfriend have a ton of mocktail recipes. All of our
Oh,
sisters
wonderful.
don't drink. Because nobody in our family or her family, the sisters don't drink. So she has a bunch of mocktail stuff.
Wonderful.
So this is Ritual Zero Proof. I'll bend it and hope.
Okay.
Oh,
This
Rachel,
is
you
one
want
of
to
the
see
ones
this?
that I use, and it's a whiskey alternative.
Okay.
They're about $30 a bottle. And anytime we do cocktails, I mean, and I can make sure, like with the Belle of Dayton one that we're going to do today with the gin one, we could use and this is Monday, non-alcoholic gin. We could use a non-alcoholic gin substitute. So we can start making sure that we incorporate maybe one or two that there's not as much of the alcohol in it
Mm-hmm.
that you can make, because the gin mule, really the only thing I'm putting in there is alcoholic is the gin. Everything else is mint and simple syrup and ginger beer and lime and all of that nonsense.
Okay.
I mean, I think that's definitely something that we can incorporate in each session.
Fabulous. I appreciate it, because it was like, oh, I really enjoy your mixology here, and if I can't drink it, my husband just does not participate enough to make it worthwhile.
I'm drinking it.
You are tonight, yeah.
Well, and I think that's good feedback, because I think there's a lot of people that still want to do things non-alcoholic, but
Uh-huh.
don't know where to start in terms of making cocktails or making mocktails. A lot of it is just the flavor.
Yeah.
So it's something we can incorporate.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. I'm looking for my chat box here.
You're welcome. And if you're in the Dayton area, I know you can purchase things like this at Arrow Wine now.
Okay.
If you're not in the Dayton area, they're usually at you can also get it at Ghost Light Coffee. Ghost Light Coffee, you can also purchase non-alcoholic spirits. If you don't have, or if you're not in town, check your local liquor store or specialty store. A lot of times they're starting to have things like this in them. In fact, I think I saw some of them at Meyer the other day.
Oh, wow.
And at the very, very least, this kind of thing, I bought all of my Ritual non-alcoholic stuff off of Amazon.
Okay.
So you could purchase those as well.
Excellent. Thank you.
Your chat is on the bottom right. Looks like a little bubble.
Oh, is that? I looked at all the rest of them except, yep, there it is.
Yeah, I just sent you a message. So when it pops up, there should be a message to you privately. And if you just type in where it says to, make sure it says everybody and type in your email. Yeah, we can send you a whole bunch, scan in a bunch of mocktail recipes.
Yeah.
I'm so excited. With the holidays coming up, I was really feeling out of it.
Also, after this, I could maybe send this to Brooke to disseminate, but there's a liquor writer, Camper English, who has kind of gathered all of the different non-alcoholic spirit variations that are out there, and I can find that and I can send it over to her and she can disseminate that as well.
Okay. Excellent.
I'd be happy to do that.
Thank
and
you.
I think, Brian, moving forward, even if it's just taking whatever cocktails you have and doing what you just did and saying, and if you'd like to make the mock version of it, just substitute this or whatever. I think that could be really cool.
Right. In this instance, too much spirits on the table for me to do that too much. But in the future, I can absolutely do one or two where we think of like alternatives for alcohol.
Okay, great. I'm just going to feed my husband the one that he was interested in. So.
Amen.
No problem.
Okay, well, I think we can get started. Thank you all. I see a lot of familiar faces, so welcome back. I know this one was put together a little quickly. My apologies. We had Right Day to Give and all sorts of other things. I'm kind of a one-man show on a lot of things, so I appreciate your patience on that. As a reminder, the layout button's up at the top right hand, so I like to do the stack layout so that I can see Brian and then all of us at the top. That's usually helpful. So, and obviously, if you put anything in the chat too, I'm happy to monitor that and ask questions. But you are more than welcome to do what Joyce just did and hop in and have dialogue and ask as we go. So, without further ado, our bearded bartender, Brian.
Thank you. I'm just playing with those stacks now. I'm like, I don't need to see myself talk. I'm here. Hi everybody. Thanks again for showing up. I really appreciate it. I enjoy doing this for all of you. And I'm already looking forward to doing the next one. I already have ideas in my head. So as per usual, you don't need a lot of fancy. My name is Brian Petro, Smart Guy in the Tie. You can find me on Instagram with the same handle. On Facebook, I have my Smart Guy in a Tie page, smartguyinatie.com. And Twitter, I am at Smart Guy in a Tie. And a lot of what I talk about is food history, cocktail history, and Indians and Columbus Blue Jackets sports. So, also nerd things. I talk about a lot of nerd things because if you could see, there's a little bit of edge here. I've got board games as well. So again, you don't need a lot of fancy materials to do all of the cocktails I'm about to make. If you don't have a shaker like this one, you can always use 2 pint glasses to roll things back and forth, or you can grab a Boston shaker, which would be something like a shaking tin on the bottom and a pint glass on top. You can use that. As I said, if you just have 2 pint glasses, you can just roll them back and forth, and you can shake things. I have a fancy muddler. You can use a wooden spoon or any other kind of spoon to muddle. Mixing glass, don't necessarily need one that looks as good as this one. Again, have another pint glass out or a large mug. Just do all of your mixing in there. I have never filled this in my entire career. And then spoons, jiggers. We talk about jiggers. I have a jigger as a measuring tool, but 1 tablespoon equals 1/2 ounce. So I will always give you the measurements in ounces. So if I say it's 1.5 ounces, that's 3 tablespoons. Or if it's 1 1/4 ounce, that would be 2 tablespoons and 1/2 tablespoon, however you want to do it. Also, these cocktails are your cocktails. So make them how you want to make them. You don't like a lot of giant lime juice, you don't like things to be really sour, cut back on the lime juice. You like things to be really sour, add a little bit more. All of these cocktails are balanced in a specific way, but again, if there is something specific in your palate that you particularly enjoy, do it that way. I'm not against it. One thing Brooke asked at the beginning of this was, are these all actually my legit favorite cocktails? And the answer is yes. These are cocktails that I absolutely love, that I think are absolutely brilliant. But these are also, I did a lot of my favorite cocktails in earlier Raiders on the Rocks, like the daiquiri, the Dublin iced coffee. There's a couple other ones that I've done that I absolutely adore that I didn't want to do a repeat of. And I also made sure I didn't do any cocktails where you had to get specialty liqueurs that will break the bank. Like, I love the Aviation, but Creme de Violette is very expensive and there's not a lot to do with it. Chartreuse is hard to find and expensive. So I'm just making sure that I'm also being conscious of budgets and what you can do with these liqueurs after you're done doing cocktails with me. So those are all the things that I thought about. I don't want to get away from my core idea of, hey, these are cocktails you can generally make with stuff around your kitchen or easy to find items. But all of that being said, the first one we're going to do is a riff on a classic. It is called the Boulevardier. And the Boulevardier is a riff off of a Negroni. Is anybody familiar with a Negroni? Awesome. We have a couple people that know it. The Negroni was created by the great story that's been told was a gentleman named Count Negroni who loved American Western culture in the late 19th, early 20th century. And he went to America. He had enough money. He could go to America, travel around the country. And he eventually came back to Italy. And he missed Italian cocktails more than anything else and Italian drinks because in America at the time, the only thing you could really find was sweet vermouth that was any kind of bitter or any kind of aperitif. So when he got back to his home, either he was very distraught over the loss of a love or he just needed a really stiff drink. And he asked for Americano, but instead of the soda water, he wanted them to add gin instead. So we have gin, we have Campari, and we've got vermouth. That's the original Negroni. This is a play off of that Negroni, which is called the Boulevardier. So we're going to start by adding a little bit of ice to a mixing glass. Not too much, just a little bit of ice because we just want to chill the cocktail a little bit. Then we are going to take 1.25 ounces of bourbon. Your choice of bourbon. I am choosing Redemption Bourbon, straight bourbon whiskey. I am going to add a little bit of extra for myself, apparently, and I'm going to add 1.25 ounces. So 1.25 ounces of the bourbon of your choice in your mixing vessel, like so. The next thing we're going to add is up to you. I gave you the option in the instructions. You can either add Campari or you can add Aperol. Both of them have an orange base in terms of flavor profile. Campari is much more bitter. Aperol is a little bit lighter. You may be familiar with it from an Aperol Spritz. The nice, light, refreshing summer drink. I'm going to go with Campari because I like that extra bitter. I like the extra herbalness in it. So I'm going to use the Campari and I'm going to use 1 ounce. Campari can be used in other cocktails. There's a cocktail, tiki cocktail called the Jungle Bird that it's in. It looks very similar to a Cosmopolitan, which I think we've done in the past. And Campari is fantastic, but again, it's very bitter, not to everybody's palate. So right now we have 1.25 ounces of bourbon and 1 ounce of either Aperol or Campari, one of the two, not both. The last thing we're going to add is our sweet vermouth. Or, if you go old school, what used to be referred to as Italian vermouth. French vermouth is the light vermouth, the dry vermouth, and the sweet vermouth is the Italian vermouth. And we're going to do 1 ounce of that. So we have 1 ounce of our Italian vermouth or sweet vermouth, 1 ounce of our Aperol or Campari, our bitter, and 1.25 ounces of our bourbon. Does everybody have that in their mixing vessel? All right, now that you have that in your mixing vessel, you're going to take a spoon. Any spoon will do. I have a fancy one. And you're just going to stir it until it's chilled. About 10 seconds or so. Now, if you have a fancy Hawthorne strainer like I do, you can use your fancy Hawthorne strainer. If you don't have a fancy Hawthorne strainer, that that spoon you just used, well, you just put that over the edge and strain this into your glass. Okay, so we now have a cocktail. Stirred. And the reason we stir a cocktail like this is because it has no proteins. It has no juices. It has no pulp. It has no milk, no eggs, nothing thick, nothing viscous, nothing we have to break down. Most cocktails that are stirred are all liquor, maybe a little bit of bitters, but most cocktails that are stirred are all liquor. You usually only shake a cocktail if you want, if you have lemon juice, orange juice, lime juice, milk, eggs, things of that nature, which are a little more thicker and a little bit more viscous. The last thing we're going to add is an orange twist. So we're going to take our orange, we're going to pull a nice, big, thick peel from it. Like so. This is a little thin, so it's going to break. And then we are going to squeeze it over, twist it over our Boulevardier. And then we can add it to the cocktail. And what that's going to do is it's going to put a layer of orange oil on top. So when you sniff it, you get a little bit of that orange scent. That's going to go well with the Aperol and the Campari. So now we have our cocktail. Again, 1.25 ounces of bourbon, 1 ounce of our bitter, whether you use Aperol or Campari, 1 ounce of sweet vermouth, stirred over with ice, strained into our glass, then a little twist of orange on top of it. And we have a Boulevardier. So, prost, everybody. So what do we think?
Rob's giving thumbs up.
Strong but good. Rachel says it tastes a little bit like an old fashioned.
There's a little bit of that basic level of old fashioned in there because you've got a lot of the orange, which if you make your old fashioned a certain way, you're going to get that orange. You have a little bit of that bitters that go with it. It lacks the sweet that an old fashioned has, but there are definitely components of an old fashioned in this cocktail. Also, so I made this one because there are so many variations to this where basically people are substituting, you know, the bourbon for gin. Or if you are on TikTok or Twitter or anywhere in the craft culture scene, you might have heard of the Negroni Sfogliato, which is the mistaken Negroni. It is the sweet vermouth and the Campari topped off with champagne or Prosecco. So there's a lot of variations to this. I saw something pop up in the chat. I just didn't get.
Yeah, Rob said the sweet vermouth balances out the bitterness of the Campari really well.
Yes, because you need that in this cocktail. And this is one of the rare times that between cocktails, I'm going to suggest that you might want to rinse out your mixing glass a little bit if you need to. Just kind of swirl it out. Because we're going to be, we might be using that again in the near future. And what's up?
I was going to say, what food did you pair with that?
Oh, the food pairing. The food pairing was fig and blue cheese crostinis. Because I thought the fig and the blue cheese went well with the orange undertones of it. And with all of those bitter notes and those heavy notes, I wanted to get something a little bit lighter and a little bit sweeter to go with it. So when I pair food with our drinks, I'm usually balancing out whatever is in the cocktail with what's something that's on the plate. So either I am leaning in and kind of adding more flavor, or if I know I have a big bold flavor in the cocktail, I will try to balance that out with something on the plate. Also, I looked for things that were common in the fall. Apparently, figs are kind of fallish. Also, with this one, this is typically drank as either an aperitif or digestif. So it's something you drink before your meal to make you a little hungrier, or after your meal to help settle your stomach. Which, in general, all of the bitters, all of the aperitifs, things like Aperol and Campari and Averna, and even Jägermeister to an extent, were kind of created with the idea of, oh, we're going to drink this liquor to help with what's going on in our stomach or going on with our bodies. Now we just get sauced.
So Brian, would you talk a little bit more about vermouth? I ended up using something called Rosso
Okay.
because it was available.
And
Looks like that.
that is definitely a nice red vermouth.
Rosso red. Mhm.
Both from Martini. So vermouths are fortified wines, and what they'll do is they'll take the wine, add the herbs and spices that are proprietary to that particular vermouth, and it runs the gamut, and then they'll fortify it with typically a brandy style liqueur. So either something that's fermented grape, fermented sugar, but typically it's going to be brandy. So for those of you not in the know, if you have vermouth at home, you need to keep it refrigerated. You need to treat it as you would treat a wine. And that's something that usually doesn't happen. So if you're surprised or this is the first you've heard of it, don't be worried. That's the first time I heard of it when I first started going into cocktail history, which is probably why so many people hate vermouth, is because you'll have it, the bartender will have it in their bar for years unrefrigerated, and it's just oxidizing and getting gross. And then when they use it in a martini, it tastes like butt.
Would you call this Rosso something in between sweet and dry? Sweet and
It's a variation of it, yes. It's a variation of red. Or sweet, I should say.
sweet. Okay.
So, someone said this was kind of like the old fashioned, right?
Mhm.
Except you added Aperol to this, right?
So,
How about if you add Averna to it?
ooh, I like where your head's at.
Like Manhattan?
Yeah, it would essentially be a Black Manhattan. Yeah, that's essentially what it would be, a Black Manhattan. But what you're doing is you're reducing the amount of whiskey, and you're increasing the proportions of the sweet vermouth and the Averna. So it's going to be a lot richer of a cocktail. It's not going to have the same level of bitter.
It's
because
more.
of Verna
Yeah.
is a little bit more of a richer bitters. So it's not going to have the same it's one of it's. I put it in the same category as Aperol, but not quite. Where it's like if you don't like bitters, if you don't like really bitter flavors, I think Aperol and Averna are good places to start because they're not extremely bitter.
And it becomes more viscous.
Yes. There's a little bit more of that richness in there because you're adding a little bit more of that sweet vermouth, which has a little bit heavier mouthfeel to it.
And I'm sorry, but what's Amaro?
So Amaro is an entire category, which is the word I was trying to pull, but I couldn't. Amaro and Amari are an entire category of kind of what I was talking about, which are liqueurs that are fortified in some way, shape, or form with a wide variety of herbs and spices. So Campari falls into that category, Averna falls into that category, Aperol falls into that category, vermouths fall into that category, but so does Jägermeister and Souza and China, and just what they would do when they first started exploring liquor is they would use it for medicinal purposes. So when they would do that, they would say like, oh, this particular herb fixes this particular malady, so we're going to put this into our liquor. And so they would just put in a whole bunch of herbs to make that flavor happen, thinking, oh well, you know, if you have a shot of this right before you eat, your appetite's gonna be better. Or if you have a shot of this, you're gonna feel a little bit better. I mean, it was the medieval version of NyQuil. It's just gonna knock you out and make you feel a little bit better.
And someone wanted to know, since you said it has to be refrigerated, or I think the vermouth has to be refrigerated, then how long does it stay good versus like non-refrigerated stuff?
A month to 2 months.
Okay,
Well,
I think we could. Oh,
I
go
gotta
ahead.
say, that red vermouth was fine, and I've had it for probably 6 months in the garage. So just, matter of taste.
It is. It's a matter of taste. People who are drinking it straight would probably disagree that it tasted okay, but as far as mixing it into a cocktail, it's gonna be fine.
Okay, I think we could probably move on to our next drink.
This is one of my favorites. So this cocktail is called the Gin Mule, and it is as if a gin and tonic and I'm sorry, it's a Moscow Mule and a couple other cocktails came together and they had a child. It was hugely popular in the cocktail scene, and I know that a few of the bartenders or a few of the chefs in the area when I was working at different places absolutely loved it once I introduced it to them. It's nice, it's light, it's refreshing, it's everything you want in a cocktail. And it was created by Aubrey Sanders, who is a really kind of a big deal cocktail person in New York, bartender in New York. So what we're going to do is we are going to take 8 to 10 mint leaves and put them into a shaking tin. Whatever you're going to shake, you want to put the mint leaves in there first. I can already smell the mint fragrance. You can add more if you really like it minty. You can add less if you don't want it that minty. You can also add more if all of your mint is really small.
And they want to know, can you substitute rum in the gin mule if you can't drink the gin? It sounds like they have an allergy.
It's going to taste a little bit different, but I think it should be fine. It'll be a little less herbal. It'll have a little more earthy flavor, but I think it'll be fine.
Or what would you recommend if not rum, like if you had to substitute something?
Rum might be the one I would substitute, to be perfectly honest. Because gin has that certain, the juniper and the little bit of the citrus and a lot of the other things in it, it's kind of would be hard to replicate otherwise. Rum is going to be earthy and it's going to add a little bit more flavor. Plus, with the ginger beer and the lime, I think rum is going to go super well with everything. Okay? All right. Once you've added the mint leaves, you're going to add an ounce of simple syrup. Mine is a little darker because I use cane sugar simple syrup. So if you use store-bought or white sugar simple syrup, it's going to be a little bit lighter. And again, remember, if you don't like your cocktails as sweet, step back on it. If you like your cocktails a little bit sweeter, add more simple syrup. This is your cocktail. Then, so now we have 8 to 10 mint leaves and an ounce of simple syrup in our shaking tin. Now I am going to add 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. I am going to squeeze mine. If you purchase yours from the store, that's perfectly okay. I am going to squeeze with knife and lime and press. If you're pressing limes to do this, it's probably going to take you 2 limes to do so, because the average lime gives about 1/2 to 3/4 of an ounce. They're really tiny. Also, you'll avoid scurvy, which is kind of nice. That'd be kind of nice for COVID. It's just like, yeah, just add some lime juice to your stuff. You'll be fine. All right, so you're going to add 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Again, if you don't like it as sour, if you don't like as much lime juice, pull back. Add a 1/2 ounce. It's fine. If you really like yours a little bit more sour, do the whole ounce. Probably closer to where I am. So 1 ounce of simple syrup, 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice, 8 to 10 mint leaves. Then what we're going to do is I'm going to take my muddler and we are going to muddle that together. Now, one thing you should remember when you're muddling is you want to muddle until you can smell the thing that you're muddling, whether it's mint, whether it's basil, whether it's rosemary, whether it's oranges, whether it's blueberries, whether it's strawberries. You want to muddle it until you can slightly smell it, because you don't want to over muddle, especially when you're using herbs or leafy plants, because then you start getting into the chlorophyll and you start making it a little more bitter. We just want it to be minty. So we're just going to muddle it for a little bit. Mm-hmm. Minty goodness. And I am definitely sniffing as I test. And I think I'm good right now. So once you're done muddling, once you feel, just bring it up to your nose, sniff it. If you could smell the mint, if you're starting to smell that mint come out, that is a good time to stop muddling. I can smell that mint. So I've got, again, my 8 to 10 leaves, 1 ounce of simple syrup, 3/4 of an ounce of lime juice. Now we are going to grab our gin. I always use Belle of Dayton. I think it's one of the best ones out there. Watershed has a 4-peel gin, which is amazing. There's a lot of really good gins out there. We're gonna add 1.5 ounces of gin to this madness. All right, so 1.5 ounces of gin has been added to our shaking tin. 1.5 ounces of gin are muddled together. 1 ounce of simple syrup, 3/4 ounce of lime juice. We're ready to go. We can add a little bit of ice. Now, again, if you don't have a fancy shaking tin, you can roll them back and forth. It's still going to get you the same results. It's still going to add the same flavor. It's still going to mix everything together. I am using my shaking tin. Make sure that if you're using a tin that has a glass or another lid on top of it, you give it a little bit of a tap to make sure it stays, and then shake for 10, 11 seconds or until you can feel the sides getting cold. Everybody has their own shaking technique. Fancy one. I don't do that very well. I like this one. And I also listen as the ice starts to melt and cool off the cocktail. The sound gets a little higher. I don't know how else to explain it, but once that sound gets a little bit higher, I know it's about ready. So what I'm going to do is add a little bit of ice to my glass. I'm using a Collins glass. You can use the glass that you have in front of you. I'm going to fill my glass about 3/4 full. Now, I have a strainer on top of mine. If you don't have a strainer, you can use a Hawthorne strainer, or you can use a small sieve. Now, if you really don't want any mint in your cocktail, you can use both a Hawthorne strainer and a small sieve. It's called double straining. And usually double straining happens when you have things like basil or mint or something where if you muddle it, it's going to leave a lot of bits. I'm going to double strain this. Of course, if you don't mind some mint bits in your cocktail, you don't have to worry about it either. So I do have a few mint bits in here, if you can see them. Ooh. And then here is my strained cocktail. The final step is to take your ginger beer. The Kroger variety is quite delightful. I've had incidents, so I open mine very carefully. And then top it off. Also, I apologize if I sneeze. Ginger beer always makes me sneeze. Top it off with the ginger beer. And even with carbonated beverages on top of a cocktail, you want to give it a brief stir just to make sure everything is incorporated together. So if I hand you a gin mule or a gin and tonic or a vodka soda, I'm not just giving you just a pure drink of whatever the mixer is right up front. And if you want to make it super duper fancy, you can take a little sprig of mint. Sexier sprig of mint than that? No. Take a little sprig of mint. Garnish it with the sprig of mint. And you have yourself a cocktail. Now remember those last 3 steps. Strain what you have in your mixing tin into your prepared glass. Once you've strained it into your prepared glass, top it off with ginger beer and then mix it up a little bit and you are good to go. Garnish it with, now I've also seen this cocktail garnished with limes. So if you want to garnish it with a lime, you can do so as well. And is everybody ready? Everybody got this? Prost. Enjoy. I don't care how much this makes me sneeze. It's so refreshing.
Is this basically a gimlet with mint?
It's gimlet with mint and the ginger beer. The thing with when preparing with gimlets is gimlets are so simple because it's essentially when you make a gimlet, it's well, you can make a you can make a gimlet with gin, but it's gin, lime, and sugar is a gimlet. But yeah, there's a lot of people have said it's kind of like a mojito and a Moscow Mule came together. But Audrey Saunders made this incredible cocktail for one of her restaurants, and it just is such a great, refreshing cocktail to have.
And it looks like Cheryl ended up using the white rum and still very nice and refreshing.
Well, and like I said, rum with the ginger and the lime is very Caribbean, very something they're going to find in tiki, and so those flavors are going to go together really well.
What's a good store-bought simple syrup, in your opinion?
I usually get roses, mainly because it's available everywhere and easy to find. There's a
This
few.
one?
Yes, that one.
I also have this.
I think I've purchased that as well. But I say roses just because it's so ubiquitous, it's so everywhere, and it's so easy to find. It's been so long since I've just flat out purchased store-bought simple syrup. And usually I only do it for events at this point. Because simple syrup it is very basic to make, so I just usually make it. What about this drink?
Do you think the darker rum would be okay in this drink?
Yeah. I'm rolling my eyes back. I'm thinking, yeah, I think a dark rum would be good in this because now you're getting into dark and stormy territory. So now you have a dark and stormy with a little bit of mint and a little bit of extra sweetness in it. So I think like if you do get a molasses rum or an aged rum, it's still going to bring that flavor to it. And that's another thing like I really enjoy talking about, especially with groups like yourself, is now that you know how to make this cocktail, there's so many ways you can play with it. You can try rum, you can try different rums. You probably make this with vodka. Whiskey is going to go really well in this as well. So if you're going to do it with, if you have bourbon at home, you can make this with bourbon. Especially considering that bourbon and ginger is a very classic pairing. And who's never had a mint julep? That's a Kentucky Derby classic. So essentially this can be considered also, if you add bourbon, a mint julep with ginger beer on top of it. So, I mean, a lot of these recipes are super simple and super easy to kind of manipulate flavors in and out.
How do you decide when to use lemon versus lime?
To me, lemon has a little bit more acid to it, and lime is a little bit more acid to it, and lemon has, I don't want to say more sweetness, but it's not as sour. So if I'm looking to go for something a little bit lighter, I go with lemon because lemon seems to be more approachable, more familiar. And lemon goes a lot better with things like apple and pear. I think it goes great with cranberry juice. I'm sorry, orange juice. So I'll go with lemon with that. But with lime, I think it cuts into that, it adds to that snap with cranberry juice. I think it really adds into that snap with ginger ale. I think lime goes better with rum than it does with whiskey. I think lime goes better with tequila. And I think because rum and tequila have very earthy flavors to it, that lime can stand up against it where I don't think the lemon can. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So a lot of times when I'm thinking about cocktails and when I'm thinking about pairing flavors, I'm also trying to think about what are the flavor combinations. Like with this one, I have 1 pan brown sugar pork and apples. So I'm thinking apples go well with the ginger, apples go well with mint, and pork and mint go well together. So like I start thinking about all these different flavor combinations and how well they go together. And that's when I start thinking about how to put flavor together. If you really want to dig into it deeply, I think there's a book that everybody should have if you like to cook and you like to play with flavor, and that's called the Flavor Bible. And essentially what it does is it's a James Beard award-winning book. And essentially what it does is it takes, like, let's say you want to cook pork. So it'll say, all right, you're going to do pork. Here is every single flavor that goes well with pork. And it will, like, bold, or it'll capitalize ones that go slightly better than the rest of them. Then it'll capitalize and bold the ones that are like, this is an absolute flavor pairing. Like pork and apples. Like apples are in bold because apples and pork go absolutely perfectly together. Or pork and maple syrup. You know, those two things go well together. So if you want to dig into flavor, I think the Flavor Bible is the book to get.
Okay, I think we can move on to the last.
All right. Sorry, I'm finishing one more.
This one seems to be a fan favorite.
It's a good one. All right. So this last one is a espresso margarita. I was going to make an espresso martini, but I wanted to go a little bit out on a limb, and I like tequila. Plus, one thing that a chef friend of mine taught me was things that grow well together can be eaten well together. And there's a lot of coffee further south in warmer climates. And so coffee and tequila go pretty well together. They go hand in hand. That's why tequila and lime go so well together. In fact, tequila and watermelon are fantastic together. One of these days, I don't know if if I have done it yet or if I haven't, but there's a tequila watermelon cocktail that I love. That might be a summer thing that we do. But we're going to make an espresso margarita. Because there's nothing like espresso at 6:30 at night. So what we're going to do is, now I have 1.5 ounces of Blanco tequila. I am a huge fan of Espolón, and I love Reposado. It's got a little bit of aging to it. It's got a little bit of barrel flavor to it. It's got a little bit of extra in it. If you have Blanco tequila, that's fantastic. If you have the Reposado, also delightful. If you have añejo or extra añejo, however you want to drink your tequila. Just going to add 1.5 ounces of this. So 1.5 ounces of our tequila Blanco or tequila Reposado, whichever you prefer. Then we are going to do 3/4 ounce of orange liqueur. I have dry curacao. You can have Grand Marnier. You can have Cointreau. You can have triple sec from Bowles or De Kuyper. Whichever one suits your fancy, you can drink. But you want to have a little bit of that orange flavor in there and the orange sweetness in there. I don't know how you all like your coffee. I like mine a little more on the black side, but you want a little bit of sweetness in this to balance everything out. So 3/4 of an ounce of orange liqueur, your choice, an 1.5 ounces of tequila of your choice. Then we're going to go with a 1/2 ounce of coffee liqueur. Now, one that I suggested, if you don't have it or you haven't heard of it, is called Cantera Negra. And that is a coffee liqueur based off of tequila. Most coffee liqueurs are based off of rum because rum is relatively neutral. I have, Kahlua right behind me that is based off of rum. This one is based off of tequila, which is why I chose it. Get a 1/2 ounce of this. And another thing is, whatever you have at home to make your cocktails is the right thing to have. There is a world famous, world-class cocktail bar in New York City called Dayton Company. And their menus are fantastic, their cocktails are fantastic, but one of the things I read in the introduction to one of their books is whatever ingredients you have at home are the right ingredients for your cocktail. Because they want you to drink cocktails, they want you to enjoy cocktails, not be like, well, I can't make this cocktail because I don't have this specific version of coffee liqueur. And then the last thing we're going to add, so we have 1.5 ounces of our tequila, 3/4 of an ounce of orange curacao or orange liqueur, 1/2 ounce of coffee liqueur, and then 1 ounce of chilled espresso or chilled coffee, whichever you prefer. But it should be at the very least room temperature. And again, if you like more coffee, add a little bit more coffee. If you don't want more coffee, don't do it. Just don't do it. However you like to drink your coffee, that's what I suggest that you do. I want mint in my coffee, so I'm going to pour a little bit of that in. I think minty coffee might be. Oh no, I can't say minty coffee is gross because I love peppermint mocha so much. I look forward. And for all of you that look forward to pumpkin spice season, I look forward to peppermint mocha season. All right, we're going to add a little bit of ice into our shaker. Then I'm also going to add a little bit of ice into my glass. But just a little bit of ice. And then, again, I'm going to put my lid on top. If it's a Boston shaker or you're putting a glass in a tin or another cup on a tin, you want to give it a nice top. Nice little slap on the top. Mine is a screw top on. Some of you might have other ways of securing yours on top. Or again, rolling them back and forth, and we're going to shake. My ice change sounds, and then we are going to strain into our cocktail glass. And that's it. That is our espresso margarita. So what you're going to end up doing is you're going to strain it out of whatever your shaking vessel is into your glass over fresh ice. So again, 1.5 ounces of tequila, 3/4 ounce of orange curacao, 1/2 ounce of coffee liqueur, 1 ounce of chilled espresso or coffee. Shake well over ice. Strain into a fresh glass over ice. Now that's the nightcap. And honestly, when I'm pairing this one, I'm going to pair it with a cobbler of some sort. I have a plum cobbler because I am personally, if you ever bake me a plum cobbler or a blueberry cobbler, I will do almost anything you ask me to. But I feel that a fruit cobbler would go well with this because I think the richness and the I just feel that like the coffee and the cobbler go well together. And so I think this cocktail with a nice fruit cobbler, apple, cherry, maybe something with a little more acid, I think this would just go magnificently together. And I got a mint leaf. So what do we think?
It's great. I would put a little bit of sweetener in it for some reason. It's
Okay. Maybe add a little extra simple syrup or maybe a little bit more of the orange liqueur.
oh yeah. Yeah.
And Rob wants to know, would you consider doing this with a salted rim since it's a play on margarita?
No, because of the coffee. I might consider a sugared rim. The traditional way that I was taught how to do margaritas, if it's a traditional margarita with lime, orange curacao, and tequila, you do a salted rim. If it's a flavored margarita, like a strawberry margarita or a pineapple margarita, or a coffee margarita, you might want to consider sugar because that's going to go better with the flavor that's in the glass. So if I was going to do a play like that, I would do a sugared rim.
How would mezcal go with this?
It would add some smoke. It would actually, for the amount of mezcal, for the amount of liquor that we're putting into it, it would add a lot of smoke to that coffee. I think that might be fantastic if you like smoky cocktails, but smoke is one of those flavors that either you like it or you don't. I know a lot of people that are like, oh my God, give me all the smoke, give me all the Lagavulin, give me all the peat, give me all the mezcal. And then there are some people that that'll smell the smoke. Be like, no, this smells like I'm drinking a campfire getting away from me. So I think mezcal, if you're a fan of mezcal, and I might even, if you wanted to mitigate the smokiness a little bit, maybe even do 50-50 tequila mezcal. Like a quarter or 3/4 of an ounce mezcal, 3/4 of an ounce tequila, and do it that way. What other questions do we have? What other thoughts?
Oh, just another thought. I remember the espresso martini that you had taught us a while back.
Mm-hmm.
I think it had Guinness draft in it.
That was the Dublin iced coffee.
Yeah. Okay. And that was a hit with my adult kids, by the way.
I love that cocktail so much.
It had. It was flavorful.
Yeah. In 2015, I did a cocktail series called 100 Days of Cocktails, which I kind of want to do again with a different flair. But that was one of the cocktails I discovered, the Dublin iced coffee during the 100 Days of Cocktails. And hands down, one of my favorite cocktails of all time.
Yeah.
Especially like if you use like a chocolate stout or a coffee stout with it.
Yes. It's great.
Other thoughts? Feedback? Do we like these? I got all the mint. Do we have a favorite? We have a winner?
The first one for me.
Oh, nice.
I like the first one too. I like them all. The first one is the best.
It's interesting because all of your faces seem like you like the second one the best.
And And I'll be honest, I was nervous about putting that first one in because of the Campari / Aperol component because like smoke bitter is another very very difficult flavor to go with. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to step on whoever was talking.
I like the first one because it's easy to make, but the second one was real good
Good, good.
as well.
All right. Yeah, I love all three. Rob, you love all of the things all the time. So
Rob
we
is
just
fantastic. That's why I love having him
I
here.
know, we just appreciate you anyway. So
Yeah, you're great, by the way. I really appreciate this. The only problem is it's 3:30 where I'm at, so it's a little early.
Little afternoon drinking for you.
But no, you're great. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
all right. Well, with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. We are actually, I'm trying to get these all up on YouTube actually now. I have a student worker that's helping me. Yay. So I'm really excited. So we do have the backlog of these, the ones that we have recorded. So I recorded this one so that hopefully we can go back through that. And you should have received the ingredients, recipes, food pairings. I think Paula, I'll get back with you. I saw your message to make sure you got the attachment. And we're trying to work to get all of those together. So I'm hoping my student can help me with that. So we'll have this little Raider on the Rocks book of sorts, which is really cool. And with that, we don't have the next one scheduled, but if you have ideas on what you would like to see, taste, I guess would be better adjective, let us know and we'll get the next one on
Thank
the
you.
books for you. So yeah, Madison said, thanks. All drinks are great. Thank you guys so much. Have a
Thank you
great
so
night.
much. Thank you so much. I appreciate it,
Yep,
everybody.
and Pablo, have a great afternoon.
Yeah, enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Hopefully you don't have to work more.
Yeah, I'll probably fall asleep by then. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you. Have a
everyone.
great afternoon. Thank you.